Game begin.
Right. Hello and welcome to I Should Check the Episode Number. Before I hit record, this should be something like episode 41 of the Spike Colony podcast. I am here with somebody who would rather die than cast Sulfuric Vortex to deal 2 damage. That is, of course, Michael J. Flores.
Wow, that is literally true. That is a literally true statement.
Your co-host is, of course, somebody who would happily die to his own Sulfuric Vortex than play any fewer than 4. I am going to, for the viewers, try to talk about a general overview about what's going to happen. We missed 2 weeks of PSS action on the
Was
Spike
it that
Colony
much?
podcast. Yeah. So we
Beezum.
So we did not get a chance to cover a really fun week 3 in which I played a 2-hour long match of Frantic Storm against Blue Black Dreadnought, and Michael Flores, of course, played the Gentleman's Agreement Burn Mirror that Chris gentlemanly agreed to do. And then the following week, I played a 2-hour match against McLean Denny with my Oath against his Blue-White Flippy deck, and Mike played Burn against Mike Harris's somewhat signature Full English Breakfast deck to victory. You have had 3 matches on stream. All 3 your opponents have decided to let you play Burn, and in all 3 you have prevailed. In fact, DiBiase is probably like the only one who could have conceivably banned Burn and then tried to pull one over with one of his decks against your Goblins or the Rock. But they just keep letting you have Burn, and I think it's just I guess it's just like regression to the mean, right? You couldn't catch a win, in the first PSS you were in, so now you just can't catch a loss. You have a 2-deck lineup too, which is fun. Like, you also had a 2-deck lineup last PSS.
I had like a 1-deck lineup last time, and they disbanded the deck every time.
Yeah.
I was forced to play a deck that, like, I don't know, man. When I was thinking about just playing my anti-red lineup, I didn't even have Rifter on my list. That's how far it's fallen in my estimation since. So I had a 1-deck lineup last time. I my last 2 weeks were nail biters. Like you said, I just didn't even see the line of casting Sulfuric Vortex to kill Chris when he played his own Sulfuric Vortex. I also just didn't put it like I didn't.
You got a little sloppy.
Like on just drawing a lightning bolt there, because he had been revealing every turn that Sulfuric Vortex. I'm like, well, how bad can it be? But it turns out it was exact C's bad. So I think, like, lost a game that I could have won a game that was close, and then the third game Chris got a little jumpy. I missed my land drop, and he got punished for it. And
yeah, I think his hand was garbage. A lot also happened in the realm of International Premodern, the largest Premodern tournament of all time at 221 players. The Spanish Nationals happened with Mono Blue Stiflenot prevailing. I also wanted to mention in the PSS we had a fun little taking the play Burn versus Goblins with Chris just getting smashed by Smith's 5 combined Mog Fanatics over 2 games. Chris was plagued by mulligan. So the theme for this episode is, despite all the recent happenings, I've not changed my mind about anything.
So a couple of things. One of the things I did was kind of research Lava Dart, because I really thought of myself as like a Lava Dart innovator. And Aaron Dix was at like 0+2 Lava Dart when I started playing Premodern. So I went back and I looked at his Easter Championships deck. And when I first saw his deck, which is for Urza's Bauble version 1.0, I think he had Volcanic Hammer in that version that he won the Easter Championships with. There was no sideboard revealed, so I had to come up with my own sideboard. And I was like a Lava Dart person because I wanted to deal with other people's red decks. And also, by the way, Lanny, at this point, I didn't realize Goblins was good. Just like, that's how naive the format as a whole was, right, in 2022. I didn't even realize it was a good deck. Thought I was like, oh, that might be novel to play. I think, like, part of your calculus against goblins is you just have earthquake or instead of lava dart.
Well, I that goes into my calculus, of course, and so Mike is referring to just a little bit of testing. I'll probably release it in a video, and I'll probably do a little bit more testing after Chris got smashed in the PSS, and a lot of jokes were made at my expense on the PSS stream because
was it that bad? I was the one doing the commentary.
So you did it, and then
Lanny thinks this match goes one way. I've always thought it goes the other way, but that was the extent of it. I wasn't like, Lanny's so dumb.
Smits capped it off by just being like, I wonder where Chris got the crazy idea to play Sulfuric Vortex in his deck.
Oh, well, that is true.
After they kind of rotted in his hand, and kind of he suffered as a result. But I basically was just like, I'm pretty sure I'm still completely right about this. So I hit up Fran, and I was like, Fran, let's just play some Burn versus Goblins. We didn't get a ton of data. I won the die roll in both matches. I took the play, of course. I was able to use all my mana pretty well being on the play, which is always good. And in one spot in Earthquake, and only an Earthquake, won me the game. In another spot, if my Earthquake was a Lava Dart, then I still would have won. Notably, we played a game 3 where I was stuck on one land for 6 turns and still won. And, in other games, I was just like, I won, and like Fran didn't have a lethal attack the following turn. Like I just had it 2 turns early or something like that. And in another game, of course, like a Sulfuric Vortex just like did 8 damage, and I just didn't have to do any work.
The thing I don't understand about your thesis on this, and I played Lanny Burn in a $1,000 tournament earlier this year, right? So we played same 75s.
I beat Goblins at the tournament too.
At Bearded Dragon, right?
That was the tournament that put me off Lava Dart, because I told you, I said it on the cast. I drew 3 Lava Darts against Goblins, and I was like, why is my sideboard card not winning the game? And then also, obviously, there was plenty of burn in the room. Like we could have faced the Lava Dart mirror.
I lost the mirror with my Force Sulfuric Vortex version. To miss top 8 in the last round, but
your opponent also had Force Sulfuric Vortex.
Well, so. I drew more of the bad cards, which is how it often goes. So my whole thing that I don't get is like, Burn is consistently the most popular deck, right? Whether people are good at it or not, it's the most popular deck. I don't understand how you want to go into a metagame playing a deck where the mirror is the most popular deck, and the games often go to who draws the most bad cards. So if your Vortex is literally on the bad card list, it's number 2 on the bad card list in game 1, and then you don't want to play the best card after sideboarding. Like, if other people have darts and you have earthquakes, A, you can't get all the bad cards out, and B, Lava Dart is like 2x Swords to Plowshares in this matchup, except for like there's no downside to it. In fact, the opponent takes damage. Like, so that's what I don't get. Like, you gain, I don't even know like how much value you're gaining. You're gaining some amount of value for sure. And,
I gain insane.
It's not insane. You gain a little.
No. I mean,
you lose so much in burn.
It's pretty. Like Lava Dart has been like. I mean, it kind of depends. So one of the things that happened to Chris was he drew 2 Lava Darts and lost. And Chris was just like, there's no sideboard card I could have drawn. I was like, you actually could have drawn Pyroclasm. Yeah.
So I'm not disagreeing with you that Earthquake is potentially anyway, a higher impact card than Lava Dart, and specifically the Goblins matchup. I'm just saying, like,
the other thing I want to point out is that
it also isn't bad.
Well, no, it's pretty bad. Like it's like in every matchup besides the Burn Mirror, there's like a better red sideboard card that you can play. Like there's no matchup in which Lava Dart is the best card that you can be sideboarding. So to me, I just feel like just think about it as a deck. Like, well, I'll get into the question of equity and play rate second, but let's just think about a deck that we want to put the best sideboard cards and the most winning sideboard cards in.
It's, first of all, the card is awesome in Elves. Straight up awesome.
No, it's like less good than Pyroclasm.
I just don't agree with you. It's straight up awesome against Elves, and it's straight up awesome against like any of these like white decks that have 1 toughness creatures. One of the things that it's good about it is that like you don't waste a point, right? So all these decks that like
Okay,
do
I'm gonna stop.
variable
I'm
to-
gonna stop you right there because like you're like wasting the question of wasting a point. Like is it doesn't math, like the map doesn't math onto it in like an efficiency standpoint, because specifically the card itself, and assuming that your mountains have no value later in the game, which they do have value, but assuming they have no value later in the game, at best you're getting 2 damage for 1.x cards, which doesn't map on Philosophy of Fire, right? So if you played Fire Ice like Martin Berlin, you'd get 1 damage, like you'd be able to pick off 2 X1s for 2 mana.
That's a true statement. However, I'm just saying, like, if I use a shock on a Mother of Runes, I've wasted a point.
No, but that's the point. That's the point that I'm making. So Lava Dart is the same thing as shocking a Mother of Runes, right? You're trading the Lava Dart or the shock for the Mother of Runes. And so all it's doing is it's enabling you later in the game to sacrifice a mountain, which you may or may not have, to do it again. Now, granted, that's like a good thing in a percentage of the time, which is the scenarios that you have extra mountains. But not every game do you have extra mountains. Not every game you comfortably sacrifice the land. Like if you're if you're maneuvering your first scroll activation.
I agree with what you're saying, but I don't know that there's a card I would rather play. Like
I would rather play Earthquake against a lot of those decks. I would rather play Pyrokinesis even.
I thought about Pyrokinesis. I think it's quite bad, but I thought about it. One of my good friends from my Penn years, he qualified with essentially this deck back in Extended in 2000 or whatever, and he had 2 Pyrokinesis in his main deck, and that was kind of a big deal for him. The thing that I would say is I just wholly disagree with you on some of these things. Like there's fringe decks like Feb and Feb to a lesser degree, but certainly Hermit Feb, because I didn't side out my 1 Lava Dart main deck against Harris, but I also didn't side in any of the other 3. But against Hermit Feb, I always side in all the Lava Darts.
Right, but okay,
but there's also like Squirrel Op, where Lava Dart is much better than Earthquake would be.
I mean, Pyroclasm is pretty good there. Like it's a question of like, one of the things is that Earthquake is like, I actually am kind of confused why you don't like the concept of Earthquake, because Earthquake is the only searing effect that you have in Premodern.
I love the concept of Earthquake. It is, however, not better than Lava Dart, because Burn is the most popular deck to play.
Well, no, okay, so I'll dig into that. So the second most popular deck is Goblins. And in fact, there are some metagames where Goblins is as represented or more represented than Burn at times. So that's going to factor into it. And then you also just have to stack up all the equity gained in all the other matches. So like, Earthquake is good against like a deck like the Rock, or just generally like some sort of mid-ranging decks where the sort of uncapped potential of Earthquake is super solid. Also combined with like picking up some spare value off of.
I mean, you can Earthquake against Landstill,
exactly.
That's
you
like,
just
great.
for Blaze, yeah, exactly.
Right, like so. I think that card has a lot of. It's like interesting to me. It's just my 75 in Burn has always been kind of calibrated to within 3-4 cards. Well, I just never thought about including Earthquake as one of them. I'm not saying it's not
Well,
good enough.
I think that like I want to like address like the question of just like how you would prepare for the mirror. So like I would say that like, okay, one,
I need to be able to take 7 cards out.
I think
that's a non-starter for me.
Well, I'll put it this way. Like, I think that it is a strategic and mathematical error to try to trend your deck that hard against the mirror when the mirror is going to be no greater than 12% of the metagame. So even in the most burn heavy metagames, it doesn't break 12%. So in 9 rounds, that represents represents 1.x encounters. Right?
I don't know who pointed this out, but somebody smart recently pointed out that the Stifle Knot and Burn win rates are where they are in Premodern only because every single deck devotes half their sideboard to both of those decks. And that if that were not the case, both of them would probably have out of control win rates. And so, I mean, just that's like a rock, that you have to kind of build the rest of the format. Like nobody's sideboarding half their sideboard against the Rock, or even against decks like Replenish, but they're all sideboarding tons of cards like Lava Dart.
Lava Dart only for the mirror, right?
Yeah, okay, fine, but like
Goblins isn't sideboarding Lava Dart.
No, but okay. How about Warmth? Warmth is not very good against Goblins, right? Like Warmth, Chill, those are only for the red deck. And like similarly, there's cards that don't have zero application, but their primary application is for Stifle. Excuse me, like Last Breath, right? So you have like Landstill decks siding Last Breath. You know, people are like,
yeah, I don't. But this is like distracting the conversation, because how tier 2 decks deal with tier 1 decks is kind of like
that is not the statement I'm making. The statement I'm making is the win rates for Mono Red and Stifle Knot are not out of control in Premodern, only because every deck devotes half the time.
Right, but in a hypothetical scenario where all you do is change the burn lists in the population, you don't even have to change a large percentage of them. You could change 50%, right? So you could change 50% is like burn that's built to beat burn, right? And then gives up points against the field, and 50% is burn that's better against the field and will only lose against the burn that's built to beat burn, right? So like what you're saying is just like I want to board out 7 cards. Just like you're essentially saying like the limit for you in how you want to approach post sideboard, because most burn decks are within 2 or 3 cards of each other pre sideboard
in game 1. Most burn decks, I would say, are within 5 cards of each other.
Yeah,
some people don't play for Urza's.
I know.
Like that's
you understand the point. I mean, I don't care how many cards it is. The point is like it's close enough to a flip, right? Like it's more important. Like the variance, like the build is going to get washed out by the variance, right?
Yeah. So pause for a second on that. I don't think that I disagree with your statement, but the bigger issue is not how many Urza's Baubles they play, but that everybody plays 4 Jackal Pups and north of 2 Sulfuric Vortex, and that the game 1s are usually dictated by just who draws more of those cards.
Right, exactly. So game 1, regardless of what your sideboard looks like, is a flip, right? So
it can be worse if you have 4 Sulfuric Vortex than if you have 2.
I understand. I'm not
sure.
It's a flip. Like it's. I don't care if it's 48 or 47. Sure. Right? It's a flip. Right? It's like we talked about it. It's just the difference between pocket jacks against ace king versus pocket 3s against ace king. It's still a flip. Like whenever it comes to showdown.
Yeah.
Like
pocket it's still 3s. A flip. Let's go.
Like. And
pocket 3s is favored.
So first of all, you're already going into game 1 with effectively 50% equity. So like let's just do the same calculation. So say you're the burn deck that gets board out 7 cards, and your opponent's burn deck only gets to board out 4 cards. Like then you have to take the win rate of those cards when drawn, the plausibility that you're going to draw them, and then blend that all together, and then your opponent. Like the spread of potential opponents, like some of them might just be like you, and they might also board 7 cards, right?
Geniuses, we'll say.
So, like my question is just like, how much do you think that you gain from being over sideboarded against burn? Like maybe 7's the equilibrium point. I don't think that 7's the equilibrium point. I think that it's like like it's probably closer to I don't know. Honestly, at 12% representation, it's close to like nothing. Like I don't play a lot of mirrors in Premodern, and I play like a lot of different decks. Like I run into, and I play a lot of popular decks, right? So when I play Goblins, Red Green, whatever, Stifle Knot's one of the most popular decks, right? I've played like a very small handful of Stifle Knot mirrors in very many matches playing Stifle Knot. So like even with Burn being the most represented, like you're trying to take an extra X slots in your sideboard to devote for a match that is like going to happen between 0 and like 2 times in your like tournament, and then you might just lose the flip on game 1 and then not see your sideboard card in game 3, and then that's just that, right?
I played. I mean, I don't know what point I'm supposed to argue or how to argue it. I played 3 mirrors at LobsterCon last year, like, and I was playing the worst deck to play a mirror.
Oh yeah, I mean that's probably just because I don't know, like that's just variance, right? Like Landstill was like under like what like that's not math, right? Like if you just ran that simulation a few times, like for every like 3 landstill lobster cons, you're just going to get a bunch of zeros. And it's just like I don't think that anybody would look at that and be like, the takeaway is that you should have made your landstill deck better against landstill. Like the point of playing a deck is that you think that it's good against the field.
I mean, I was on the wrong end of the main deck to Fairy's Response landstill, and I was up against the main deck, the Brian Selden version. I had the bad version of landstill 2 out of 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, 1, like, you got owned. 2, like, I got beat, should have played around it, and like by not playing poopy deck. And 3, like, the fact that you lost to a bunch of mirrors or had to play a bunch of mirrors.
Okay, first of all, I went 1-1-1 in the 3 mirrors.
Oh well,
and I would have
so a perfect even. What's your EV in the mirror? 50%? Is that crazy?
To be fair, and I should have won the draw. Right, we just went to time.
Like I just have a pretty simple statement about this. It's like my burn deck. I think my burn deck goes like 38% in the burn mirror. And then like every other mirror is like 50%. That's like generous. That's 12%. It's a huge swing, right? But then I think I just get it back. Like I don't have to do 12% better against the, like I don't have to make my burn win rate against the rest of the field better by 12%. I only have to make the burn win rate against the field like better by like 3%, like with the different sideboard, because I'm going to face 8 times more rest of the field than I'm going to face against burn. So like everything that I do to make my deck gain equity against the field, everything I do with my sideboard, like even giving up lava darts, it's like sure I'm throwing a huge chunk, throwing over a super meaningful chunk of my EV in the burn mirror out the window, but it's not 0. And then like I also gain that, also by gaining that equity in the field, I distance myself from the potential of that mirror. Because if you're playing a cannibalized burn list, what if your first 3 rounds are against goblins and you're just like looking at your sideboard, like board out. I also need to add that my testing showed me that you actually have to keep Jackal Pups in against goblins.
So you have Jackal Pups and Earthquakes in at the same time against Pyrokinesis.
Yeah.
I mean, this.
You just have to watch the games, like the flow of the game. It's just very, very evident, because the Jackal, like you never have 2 Jackal Pups in play, so you're not going to expose your anything to Pyrokinesis. In fact, you never have more than 2 creatures at all in play, because if you have 2 creatures in play, like you've just already won the game, right? Because the game, the Goblins versus Burn match, the board state like maxes out at 2 permanents at one time for the first 4 turns. So. That was one thing that I noticed. And then just the mana efficiency of Jackal Pup was just like, I just played it and I would just either attack or block. Like I'd play it and then Fran would play a creature and I attack and he'd take the trade, because he's never not going to take the trade, right? And sure, I'd take some damage.
It's a bad block, but it's a block.
Yeah.
Right?
And so of course I'd take some damage, but like, I'm the deck with reach and my opponent's not. And like, interestingly, when the board state is held back to 1 creature, Fran never has air to go for a Gem Palm Incinerator, right? Because he's always going to be threatened to have that Gem Palm turn into dealing 0 damage. Now, like, don't get me wrong, like I'm not saying that like Lava Dart is an atrocious card against goblins. Like where Earthquake is improving, I think, by a factor of like, oh, my win rate goes up. Like, actually, if you're going to draw the sideboard card, it is a huge difference, because like I kind of feel like you almost can't lose a game where you draw Earthquake against goblins, whereas Lava Dart, you're probably like just a slightly better version of yourself. How much
of that is that their opponent is playing into an Earthquake and then can't recover, versus like if they were informed?
They can't choose not to play against an Earthquake, because the only way goblins can't play 1 creature a turn, right? They can't do the anti-wrath strat against a red deck where like it's just they
get picked off by point removal.
Well, they're taking chunks out of your life total, right? Because the way it works, right, is that like every turn, like the goblin scales like 1 goblin is 1 damage, 2 goblins is 3 damage, and 3 goblins is like 10 damage, right? So like, if you're getting in for 1 a turn, then you're just losing to the burn deck's draw step. And then like at any point you might be like, okay, I'm going to set up lethal in 2 turns, so I got to like commit. And like the other thing is like Earthquake is incredible at erasing Goblin Lackey too. Like you can just take a Lackey hit and take it all back against Earthquake.
It's a good recovery card. It's just like Pyroclasm in red.
And it's like the only only recovery card, because if you don't have Earthquake, then your burn deck is forced to trade 1-for-1 against the Ringleader deck, which of course all observers have noted is really bad for burn.
But Earthquake gives you recovery specifically against Ringleader. I buy it.
Yeah, and I mean, and obviously, it helps you beat Call of the Herd. It helps you beat sort of any grindy, like whatever mid range deck. But anyways, my point is, you're gonna win more often. Like in a meta, now if the meta game gets super cannibalized, there's sort of just going to be a equilibrium effect where it's just like, okay, goblins represent, or burn is now at 20% representation, 1 in 5 players. That is 50 people at the next
so
225.
I have this pulled out already.
Yeah, they're put it in, sleeve it up. Just take the darts out. Just take the darts out. Take it out of the main deck. Like, I'll take a Blaze. Like, if your Jackal Pup dies, but they're dead, then they're dead with the Jackal Pup trigger on the stack.
Dies in spectacular fashion to this Earthquake. I don't know.
So
I don't know.
If your Jackal Pup dies in spectacular fashion to the Earthquake, it means your opponent's dead too. But anyway,
maybe. Oh, wait. This is a. It sounds like something that someone who only understands the stack would be able to navigate.
Yeah. That's why I'm telling you, their opponent dies with the Jackal Pup trigger on the stack.
Yeah, so that's
it's the same thing as it's like reverse Exalted Angel.
I was correct.
But yeah, I mean, just like I guess I should pull up the exact number. The data from the Spanish Nats has been floating around, but of course, there's a lot of chatting and stuff that buries that data. But 220 players. So if we're looking at 12%, that's what, 25 burn pilots. So I don't even know if the Spanish Nats cracked the 12% mark. So
0 burns in the top 8, 2 in the top 16 though.
Yeah, I mean the top 16 was the cut. So yeah, 24 pilots on burn. So just over 10%. So yes, of course, if burn all of a sudden becomes this deck that has 20% representation, then it starts making a lot more sense to like put the lava darts back in the sideboard. But like I think what's kind of bothering me is like really this, like, I think lava dart is hugely overrated because like when I think about a sideboard card, like a card that I'm bringing for like this to me, like the lava dart in the burn sideboard is not doing the like board and engineered plague thing. It's the thing that Rich was doing, we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago, about boarding in Gerard's Verdict, because he has nothing else to board in. It's just like, it's an upgrade to the worst cards in your deck in Star Match. You can bring it in against literally anything, right? So if you have like random whatever, it's bad against stasis or whatever. It's like, well, lava dart's great, right? Lava dart feels amazing because you're just like, oh my god, I cut all these ball lightnings from my deck so that I get to have lava dart. But you're never hyped about that. You're
when
like,
I start losing to stasis with mono red, we'll look up whether or not I'm bringing in
Ty actually lost to stasis at the 1K. But anyways, that's my point. Like, point A is just that like burn's not at high representation. Like point B, even if it is at a high representation, like if like I have a list and I think that it's like the optimized list, then the burn players should just be playing the optimized list. And what should happen is that the burn mirror should always be 50%. Like the problem with preparing for the mirror is that it only works for you at one tournament. Like after that tournament, like the people have your tech, they have your strategy, and they're just going to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to do this in the mirror. I'm just going to use this list if it's the good list, and everything goes back to 50%.
I'm in a different place, Lanny. I'm just like, who do I respect? Who do I want to use my sideboard slots against? And burn is who I want to use my sideboard slots against.
Well,
like I obviously don't.
I get that
about warmth to play anarchy, right? Like.
Well, yeah, that's because Sulfuric Vortex beats Warmth. Like, come on.
Well, but like it doesn't beat Warmth and Circle Red, as we have both come to know.
Yeah, right? But they're only going to draw one or the other.
That's just not true. That is not true.
Well, then you lose, right? Then you just lose. But your opponent's playing a 2-card parlay against your against your entire strategy. It's just like they get to have it, right? If they're going to bring in 2 copies, if they're going to bring in 3 copies of each, if they're going to spend all their mana getting to their, if they have Hydro Blast too, like they just deserve it. And if they did that against my Grotog deck, they did it against the Rock, they did it against like whatever, like you just board in Deep Analysis against the Rock, right? It's just like you just win every single game.
With like, which deck? Any deck that could cast Deep Analysis?
Any deck that can cast Deep Analysis, and probably some decks that barely can. Like if I'm playing the Terrageddon deck, which obviously doesn't lose to the Rock, but like has scant access to blue mana, like I have to just be like
Mox. Yeah. My version of that, which is obviously before you and I started playing together, was Thawing Glaciers and Fact or Fiction against the Rock, and I did fine.
Yeah, just like name a card. Just name a card.
There's a
55% chance if you name any Magic card, it's good against the Rock.
Well, I mean, like a Thawing Glacier is literally just
Whispers of the Muse
keeps their entire disruption strategy. So
I guess Whispers of the Muse can get Cabal therapied, but not after you already got one. So
Whispers of the Muse is, I almost played that at the Spice tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still the place that I stand. Like DiBiase's come to the realization that maybe his sort of crazy build that has Baubles and 4 Sulfuric Vortex should be running more Shock and less Incinerate. But these are all things on the margin. The reason I was like, I still believe everything I believe was just that, like, I saw what happened. Everybody says the Smiths brothers are like, we test this DI. It's like this only deck. We only own 1 deck each. We just own Burn and Goblins, and all we do as brothers is play Burn against Goblins, and every single time Goblins wins. And I was just like, that there's something wrong here, because one, Michael J finally came around to the beauty of Pyrokinesis in the matchup, but things flip.
Smith's had it in his deck, so I'm like, he's probably right.
He's probably right, but he only has 2 copies, and also I was the one who told you that Smiths is the Pyrokinesis strategist. Like I wasn't saying Pyrokinesis wasn't a Lanny take. It was a Smiths take that was being told by Lanny.
If your opponent has Jackal Pups in their deck, Pyrokinesis is clearly a super, super good card.
Well,
right? And it is also very fine, etc. versus Ball Lightning.
Yeah,
which is always going to be in their deck.
So I boarded out the balls out. The balls are what I boarded out for Earthquake.
Interesting.
Because
change your curve, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. I just needed, like, I was looking at like what mattered, and I will say this: if I do have Lava Dart, then I'm more reticent to board out balls, because I was using my Jackal Pups as Lava Darts, and like the way that it kind of worked out was, like I said, it's just like if somebody's going to Pyrokinesis me for 0 mana, I'd rather they catch a 1 mana card than a 3 mana card, even if it deals 4 damage to myself, right? Because if Pyrokinesis is like the when drawn helps Goblins win the game, then I got to minimize its impact, and one way to do that is just like never have more than 2 creatures and always have those creatures cost 1 mana.
It's always striking to me how smart you are at Magic. I can barely keep up with you, and I've always considered myself the smartest at Magic, and so that's clearly not the case. However, I want to look at some of these Spanish Nationals decks. Can we look at Juan Sanz's tournament-winning Mono Blue Stiflenot deck?
I've like no comment on this. This is just Mono Blue Stiflenot.
It's got a flash of insight in the main deck and 2 boomerangs.
The second boomerang is the spice. The 17th land and the second boomerang are the most controversial elements of this deck. The rest is exactly what I would play.
I'm like, that boomerang can bounce one of Lanny's Meddling Mages. That's literally what's going on in my head.
Mike, if I have 2 Meddling Mages, one of them is naming Boomerang. The first one names Dreadnought.
Damn it, Lanny!
Drawing multiple Meddling Mages is pretty broken.
It's going to be tough for me to play a deck that beats your GAT deck and then also beats all the red decks that are going to be there. Because this deck looks like it's very well set up to beat red decks.
I mean, in the sense that it just has 4 Hydroblast and 4 days. It's just like it's only slightly better against red deck than blue eye would be, and then this you don't get a Plowshares Your Dreadnought with this deck.
I'd take this deck against Gobbo.
You would prefer to take this deck against Gobbo than blue white?
Blue white, yeah. What do I get from blue white? Plow? This deck has 4 Hydroblasts.
Yeah, but blue white gets to run 4 Hydroblast, 4 Plow, 2 Hydroblast.
I also think that there's an argument to be made that I don't need these like some of these sideboard cards for Premodern and Chill. I just play more Hydroblast, more Blue Elemental Blasts, right? Like, that's what I was thinking about doing. So whatever deck I'm going to play, I'm going to bias against red, right? Like,
if you talk about it with a high enough frequency, nobody's going to play red.
everyone's going to... Really? You think? I was just like, should I play red?
There's still money on the line. As much as I want to double a charity donation, for those who don't know, the next Premodern 1K is happening, Jesus
Next
Christ,
weekend.
a week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it is...
There are still like 8 slots available. Well, as of 2 days ago, there were 8 slots available. I'm sure some.
It's a 1K with a charity rake, and the charity rake doubles if a red deck wins the tournament, which is just a hilarious way to disrupt a nice and healthy, stable metagame. But the problem is, like, you know, somebody who likes money more than they like charity is going to be like, well, I guess I'm going to play Enchantress.
Yeah, it's like,
Enchantress really beats Mountain.
But it doesn't beat Gobbo.
It kind of does, right?
No.
Does it not? So there's just no deck that beats Goblins and Burn.
There are. You could play like the super biased version of Blue White Flippy that has like Galena's Knight, Silver Knight.
Only pro red guys. So
Yeah,
like a third party who has any copies of Call the Herd. Like,
So that deck is also very good against Stifle Knot. However, it is not very good against the Rock. Let me tell you.
all roads.
I load, as you know, as all listeners know, I never actually wrote this report up for SpikeColony.com, even though I intended to. I was leaning into the villain arc on this one, where Landiho asked to borrow the blue-white deck, the blue-white. I don't know what you want to call it. We were calling it blue-white Flippy, but then the White Weenie crew was like, "That's not blue-white Flippy."
Well, Blue White Flippy contains multitudes, but I mean, I think the weird thing was just that, like, did the deck that you give land contain Savannah Lions?
It has Savannah Lions and also Silver Knight, Galena's Knight.
So it's like a cross.
Crimson Acolyte. It's like very biased against red.
Yeah.
That deck gets raffle stomped by the Rock, as evidenced by me beating land to win the belt that night.
Yeah. So the Blue White Flippy deck is just like a land still deck that like cuts out the top, like a little bit of the top end for more creatures. It's like,
but a lot more creatures. It doesn't.
No. I mean, it like the creatures it adds are like Meddling Mate. Like, it doesn't run Decree of Justice. It doesn't run 2 of the standstills, 2 of the
you're right.
Factor
Like,
Fictions.
it doesn't cast any of the expensive cards.
3 of the lands. It just plays
no
Wasteland.
Humility, no Wrath.
And then it swaps those in for Meddling Mage and some Mother of Runes, like not even the full 4-pack.
No,
Silver Knight, not even the full 4-pack, etc.
No, it has 4 Silver Knight, 4 Mother of Runes, 4 Savannah Lion.
No. That's what I'm saying is the sort of a supposed stock Blue White Flippy. Like the Blue White Flippy like is more of a mid-range control deck. And it's actually quite mana hungry than it is like a tempo deck. Like, yours is like White Weenie splashing blue, but like splashing more blue than like just splash. Like, so some of the lists are just like White Weenie that just splash for Meddling Mage, and then yours is like White Weenie splashing for Meddling Mage and 2 Factor Fiction or whatever, and
it has
some sideboard cards.
It has actual standstill in it.
Yeah.
The thing that I would say is, like, if there's ever going to be a tournament to not play the Rock, to not worry about the Rock, this is the tournament, right?
I think some Rock pilots think that they can beat Burn and Goblins 46% of the time. Might be enough for them.
I think that I would beat Goblins more than 46% of the time and Burn less than 46% of the time.
Yeah, roughly the same percentage in both directions.
Yeah, so like it's like if it's Goblins, maybe.
And if you change your list to be better against one, you just be worse against the other. So you're just whatever.
Yeah, I was like dummying up. Well, what if I had to play the Rock against Goblins? What would I side? And I'm like, my conclusion is my deck still has Cabal Therapy, and I'm siding in Haunting Echoes because like that's how bad it is.
I mean, I guess you don't have to play a lot of Naturalize at this tournament if you really think half your matches are going to be against red.
But half are going to be against anti-red. Well, you're the weirdo with the non-red, non-anti-red deck.
I mean, that's just because I don't own any other decks.
But I own all the decks, and you could just be like...
But I can never ask you to borrow a deck, because then you just tech against the deck that I asked to borrow from you.
Well, why don't you just ask to borrow 3 different decks?
Because that's just like... That's a giant pain in the ass for you, because you have to put 3 decks together.
No, the decks are all built.
Well, no, like I would ask you to make changes to the lists.
Like so, or I currently have 12 decks built, so not even counting cards that I've loaned you. So
I choose Sandblack Enchantress.
see, I don't have that built.
And
I was thinking about building it.
And Natural Order Elves. Never mind, it's too much goblins. I choose my 3 decks are my 3 decks will be Grotog, Mono Blue Storm, and Landio. So the background to this is also like your old pal Lanny here has been in one of the biggest Magic the Gathering skids he's ever experienced. I threw my match against you, or at least I threw my sequence against you when I didn't Merchant Scroll first snap. I threw against Nick, where I managed to make a game that was unwinnable. I managed to make two games that were basically unwinnable for Nick winnable, while also taking up 2 hours of your time. So once again, I apologize for that. I plundered.
Great for the viewers. The viewers love these.
Yeah. They're just like, let's go to game 3.
My games are all 5 minutes long. So
I played in my latest YouTube video. I played the red green oath deck, and I just like punted the way the mirror in 2 straight games because like I just don't even know what to pay attention to when I don't have instants or blue cards. And then I was at least inaccurate against McLean. Like a lot of onlookers might have given me some credit that like maybe the draws were not favoring me, but also I should have mulliganed in game 3. So like that's how bad my draw was. And then
that match was so good. The first game, you really gave the viewers a heart attack if they were cheering for Lanny, because like you won that game, and I was just like I had no fingernails left at the end of game 1. But I think that his straws just lined up so perfectly against your strategy. Like, yeah, maybe you were a little inaccurate, but like
I made a key change to the deck, which was taking out Wrath of God from the sideboard. So
okay, fair enough. But like there's a limited top 8 where Patrick Chapin I think loses to John Finkel. And Chapin has like one of the most powerful decks you could have drafted in Urza Saga. He has like Phyrexian Processor and Gaia's Embrace, like all these like very powerful first pickable cards. And Finkel just has like the simple solutions to all these cards. So you're just like processors or pay 7 or whatever, just disenchants it. You know, like stuff like that. And I think like McLean's draws were just whatever the good thing is that Lanny has, he has. Let's go with the disenchant, you know. And you know that's just how it is.
Well, I should have just learned. I should have just learned from Lan, because I had like double, triple meddling mage draws against Lan, and even though Lan had Wrath of God, it wasn't like his Wrath of Gods were like super tasty, and he still had Fear of Counterspell. But one thing that Lan did was like he was just like, well, sure, I don't have a hand, but like 3/3s are bigger than 2/2s, and I can attack, and you can never block with these 2/2s because these are just basically like fragile enchantments at this point. So, or maybe they're bulletproof enchantments because they're naming all removal spells. But I kind of
6/6s are even bigger than 2/2s because that's what a Call of the Herd is. It's not a 3/3, it's 6/6.
Yeah. So, you know, it was just like a thing. Like I chalk it up to just not being able to, like, I'm a reasonable limited player, but one thing that I don't do enough in Constructed is like realize when I'm playing in a limited game. Like maybe I had no cards in hand, but like there's still a battlefield. Like Meddling Mage is a 2/2. It can be beatable. Like I just needed to understand, like the way I described it on stream was just like, I feel programmed to always behave linearly, and Meddling Mage is like the best card against linear thinking, because if your entire game plan is like, I need to accomplish this sequence of like, 1, 2, 3 win, then they're just like, well, I will name 1, 2, and 3. But sometimes you just have to improvise and just be like, okay, well, I'm no longer playing a linear game. Now I'm playing a game where like I need to pay attention to the wider range of things that can be in my opponent's hand. Like a lot of times I'm just kind of like, okay, if they have a counterspell or whatever, they have like some answer to my 1, 2, 3, then they win, and if they don't, then I win. But like in limited game states, it's just kind of like, well, next turn they could like play a removal spell, a creature, or they can draw cards, or they can pass, they can attack, they can block, and you kind of have to improvise. And I just wasn't prepared to improvise. Like I was looking for the shortest like the shortest distance to a win, and I was just going for big jams. And I think the biggest play that you saw that was when I cast Orm's Chant to resolve an Oath of Druids, because I was protecting against a hand of a null mana leak prohibit, but essentially 2-for-1ing myself against any disenchants. And I was just like, well, he's got 4 disenchants and he's already cast one, so went for it and got punished. And think it's just interesting because it just didn't occur to me that I could take a line that was just more like, attack with everything, animate treetop attack or flashback call of the herd, or, do different sort of interesting things. Like I wasn't doing combat math and like thinking enough about like what the game would look like.
What if he just like leaves Exalted Angel on defense? Like does your play a bunch of 3/3s plan break down then?
Well, I can, my Terravor can reach a size that Terravor can always attack.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then because of Exalted Angel using the stack, I can always overload the board and do a big like team attack that's going to force the meddling mages to chump block. And then once the meddling mages are dead, then my hand is unlocked and we have a game. So really interesting stuff. I mean, I'm glad we got a showcase to unusual decks in the form of Landyhoth and the blue-white Flippy. I'm a little sad to be officially 1 and 2 in the PSS in televised games, and have an uphill fight against Smiths, Harris, and Phillips ahead of me. So, but yeah, PSS is still great. Kind of sweet. You are 3-0. Smiths is 3-0. Everyone else is 1 and 2, so it's been a little bit of farming over here. I'm
curious what Smith's true record is. So,
well, if his current record's any indication to what happened on week 2, I'm like I have to assume. I mean, we could we could place our bets.
Yeah.
Smith's played against McLean. McLean priced into banning. I guess McLean didn't ban goblins against Phillips, so Phillips got to play goblins. So maybe he let Smiths play goblins and basically do the same thing to him. Because he needed to ban Red Green Oath for being...
Smiths just has like... I think between Smiths and Chris, they just have like better lineups than I do. Like I could have just had Red Green as my third deck instead of the Rock.
Yeah, you would have been in...
My lineup would be like literally just much better.
Yeah, you'd have been in an awesome spot. I mean... The dynamic is like super interesting. I like didn't consider all of the potential lineups. Like I didn't consider that combo would be prevalent, or like not super prevalent, but like more prevalent than like say mid range. So like there's like no mid range, and like the other thing is just like players will just not play mid range. It's just like, well, mid range isn't good.
What are you talking about? I have 3 mid range decks.
You have 1 mid range deck, and you have 2 playable decks, but yeah, so anyways, we're bouncing around a little bit. I think
I want to talk about these Tide Control decks. I was thinking, like, what if I played a Tide Control deck at Premodern and Chill? Isn't Tide Control great against everything except for the red decks, and then we just take that sort of Bearded Dragon strategy and play like 11 sideboard cards against the color red?
I mean, we're looking at 2 chill, 4 Hydroblast, 1 Blue Blast.
No, I would go hard.
There's 7 in the third place players, Oscar Garcia's. But yeah, there's no stopping you from just going 8 blast, 4 chills, just 12 sideboard cards against red. I mean, Force Spike is just like a great card against both goblins and burn. Like, just like Force Spike, get him. Accumulating Knowledge is pretty horrible. But
then there's the other one is blue-white Tide Control, right? Or are they both mono blue? Oh, they're both mono blue.
Yeah, they're both mono blue. This one has 6 blasts and no chills. I think if you're going to play Tide Control, chill obviously makes sense for the same reasons that chill makes sense in Grotog, because you're going to destroy their lands and then put them locked under. Yeah, there was a Machine Head deck that was at the top of the Swiss at the end of day 1, featuring the full 4 Dark Ritual and 4 Hypnotic Spectre. This is definitely the least likely deck that I would have...
Why is this called Machine Head? Isn't this just Mano's deck?
It is, but Mano's deck is Machine Head.
No, Mano's deck is actively not Machine Head.
I mean, we call it Black Red Muse if we're being correct, but it just gets called Machine Head. But Mano's cut Dark Ritual from his deck, I think. So,
Well, regardless, man, it doesn't like it's become Machine Head because it has neither the card Urza's Rage nor the card Void.
it's true. It does not contain any characters with machines for heads.
Machine heads.
I don't have too much to comment here. It's too bad that they lost the first round of the top 8. This deck is obviously really good against Phyrexian Dreadnought strategies, combo decks, and
it's a little weak to red decks though.
Yeah, there are 2 main deck Phyrexian Negators. Only 2 though, so you're covered. You're fine. I mean, who knows? You can sacrifice 3 Ravenous Rats to it and attack the next turn, and then sacrifice 2 more Ravenous Rats to it when it gets chump swapped. You can sacrifice your rack to it. Yeah, I don't know. The reason why I said the thing at the top of the show of I'm not changing my opinion on anything is I'm not changing my opinion about Mono Blue Stifle Knot. I still think that it is not as good as Blue White Stifle Knot. Can Mono Blue Stifle Knot win a tournament? Factually, yes.
Factually, it can win the biggest tournament.
Yeah, it can win the biggest Premodern tournament of all time. I don't really have too much to add. I know people like coming for me over this take, and I've kind of talked about it to death. I will say what I do like about this list is that it has 4 Portent, 4 Opt, 4 Impulse for selection. So it's kind of using the most powerful, running 4 Impulse is the biggest reason why I like Mono Blue Stifle Knot, and the fact that Impulse is less good in blue white, is one reason that matters. But yeah, you really kind of have this deck with 2 gears. Brain Freeze, Winter Orb maybe constituting a second gear, but those are pretty.
What is the second gear in game? This deck only wins
in game one. In game one, it's just Dreadnought. But I'm just saying, if your approach to the match is just kind of oh well, I can beat Landstill because I have Brain Freeze. I think that's reasonable. And I think Winter Orb is a reasonable pivot. But I've actually encountered this with my Storm deck, where people saw it on stream. You can play Storm as Mono Blue control, but it's it's a very leaky Mono Blue control deck. And it your opponents aren't really what they're doing doesn't need to change too much, because a lot of the things that work against you still work. So we've talked about that at length of just what it looks like to pivot, what changing gears looks like. And a big reason why I don't like Mono Blue Stifle Knot is at the end of the day, your win cons can only be Phyrexian Dreadnought and Brain Freeze, and it's just too narrow for being exploited. And then notably, two meddling mages is always a lock against this deck. Oh no, yeah, there's 0 copies of Powder Keg, which I co-sign because I hate Powder Keg and Blue White Stifle Knot.
I mean, the Tide Control deck is way better against Meddling Mage. It has Powder Keg, Nevinyrral's Disc, and Chain of Vapor.
That is true. Although, what would I do? I would just name Chain of Vapor, and then if I'm blue-white, I stifle the other things, and if I'm another deck, I guess I counter the other things. Nevdisc is a hefty 4 mana, so it's always getting countered, but Powder Keg is pretty easy to get under. It's an interesting one. This Tide Control deck, I think, I don't know, I love Force Spike, because it's just it's a 1 mana spell. I love 1 mana spells.
That's great. You can, but this strategy can go hard, Lanny. That's what I'm saying, right? It can, we could go 12 sideboard cards against red. 12 high impact sideboard cards. You could add 4 spikes. You could go 14 sideboard cards.
Yeah.
Just leave 1 Nev's disc for all other decks put together.
Granted, the last time I ran red deck against Tide Control, I was a blunder away from winning the match, so it might not be too cut and dry, but yeah, with enough sideboard cards, you can fix anything, right? And then all of a sudden,
well, yeah, if you have enough sideboard cards, you've transformed the deck. So almost by definition, that's true. Do you stop being a Tide Control deck though? Are you just
no? The Tide combo is effective against both red decks.
And you just manage their. I feel like you're not putting anybody away with this deck though. That's the thing. I feel like you execute your combo and then there's still like they've got like 70% health bar left.
It's also pretty one dimensional in that respect. And then one of the hilarious things is that it is also gets completely spanked by a red green oath, which is a very plausible pick for somebody looking to beat red decks. So I would say that if you were playing in a field where all you cared about was like never losing against goblins and burn, I would just play red green oath and I would play 4 Zern orbs in your sideboard and just try to draw a Zern orb.
What about this the other version? This one has misdirection in the main deck. Misdirection seems like a sweet one against red green oath.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's triple Teferi's response
for like a nice clean 2-for-1, but you know, the fun thing about like the red green oath deck is that you're also like, I mean, I don't know, I played it wasn't even close because it's like, sure, you can draw extra cards, but like the way you win is man lands. Like the way you win is 4 Mistress Factory, 3 Fairy Conclave, and you're up against 4 Wasteland, 4 Port, 8 Stone Rains,
Treetop Village,
8 Stone Rains and Treetop Villages, and their own Mistress Factory. So it's just like you're playing 7 win cons against 20 removal. Like 20 seems low. Is it just half the deck just beats that? Yeah, I don't think it's happening. I mean, I guess if you tide combo them and then close the door before they find anything.
Oh, and they could just cast Terravor. Like there's just no downside risk. Just like cast Terravor.
Yeah, you get a sideboard in to call the herd, and then sort of same stuff happens. Yeah, and notably, Powder Keg doesn't destroy enchantments.
Do you think Red Green Oath is a good choice for Premodern and Shell?
Yeah, I think it's a superb choice.
I disagree. I think Red Green Oath is so bad against Mono Red.
I don't think it's so bad, and like I said, you just play more sideboard cards. You just play extra Zern Orb.
I think that's super plausible. The one game that I did get against the last meetup I played the green-white version, which is Fran's more recent version. I lost to Mono Red in the first round.
I mean,
but I did get a game where I drew Zern Orb.
So this was another thing I wanted to talk about. Are you familiar with the concept of nut advantage in poker?
Nut advantage?
Yeah, nut advantage in poker.
No.
Are you familiar with range advantage in poker?
Oh, like the top of my range is higher than the top of your range?
Yeah, so there's basically 2 things that'll happen. So, in Texas Hold'em, you're going to behave a certain way before the flop. Your opponent's going to behave a certain way the flop, and your behavior before the flop telegraphs what's called your range. So your range is all the possible hands that you have. So generally speaking,
my range is all in on queens or better.
I'm saying,
and then I muck otherwise.
I'm saying, yeah, that's
my
pretty
range.
nitty. That's pretty nitty. So just for the viewers, that's like the concept of range. So when the flop comes up, the 3 cards come up, one person is going to be advantaged in their range because somebody's going to be the aggressor and somebody's going to be the caller pre-flop. So the aggressor, obviously different things matter like position and player profile, etc. But like if we're just playing standard ABC poker or just like game theory poker, like somebody's going to have a certain amount of hands in their range, and the other person's going to have another certain amount of hands in their range. So once you see the flop, all of a sudden those hands have different equity. Yeah, they have different equity assigned from it. So like maybe somebody connects with the board, and so some people's ranges are more likely to connect with the board. So if you're passive pre-flop, maybe you had some low cards, maybe you had some maybe you had a suited hand that converts into a draw, maybe you have connectors that converts into a draw. Like you're going to have, a range that can sometimes connect. Or if you're raising pre-flop and an ace comes out on the flop, and you're just more likely to have aces than your opponent's does, because like if your opponent had an ace in their hand, sometimes they would have raised you instead of calling, et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, this is a concept in poker. So what can happen is that you can have a board, maybe it's a board with an ace, and then 2 connected low cards. So like you're more likely, you have range advantage because you have all the aces in your range. You have ace king, ace jack, ace queen, ace 10 all the way down because you're like in position, you're being aggressive with an ace pre-flop. But your opponent has all of the potential straights and maybe potential flushes in their raise because they don't have a lot of aces in their range, but they do have sort of suited connectors down the range. So I think this actually applies pretty one-to-one with Magic when it goes to deck selection, because one of the things that we talk about with decks like Dreadnought and decks like Goblins is just that like, how do you beat these decks? Just like, okay, well, you have a bunch of sideboard cards. It's like, but they still have nut advantage. They can still draw the nuts. And like, there's just no combination of cards that like you could have not literally, but there's very few combinations of cards that you can have that can beat a Dreadnought draw. That's just like turn 2 jam, like turn 2 Dreadnought Vision Charm, days back up with gush foil behind. Like very few hands beat that. Red Green Oath generally doesn't have a large range of nut hands. So if you're talking about Red Green Oath versus Burn, the nuts is Sphere Resistance backed up, like Mox Diamond Sphere Resistance backed up with a bunch of land destruction, right? Or the nuts is like your opponent doesn't draw that many lands. So like that's a much smaller percentage of scenarios than like Goblins just 40% of the time just has Goblin Lackey. And like that's just like the nuts. Like,
I mean, I hope you went first. Like the thing that's so disheartening is you might even have an answer to Goblin Lackey, but it's like Fire Ice or Smother. You know?
Or it's a blocker that just gets removed, right? So I wanted to introduce that because kind of the thing that you feel with Red Green Oath, I think, really comes from the fact that like it doesn't have like too many nutted draws, and it can run away with games, and it is definitely powerful. Like you sometimes the nutted draw is just like I have Oath of Druids in game 1 against Goblins, and it's just like and it came down on turn. Like all the nutted draws are like I have Mox Diamond, so I get to spend my mana every turn, and like but like that version of the nuts is like nothing compared to like Dreadnought combo, Lackey starts, burn gear 1, replenish winning on turn 3 or 4, etc., etc. So but you should just Red Green Oath, it's just a Volvo, it just it'll get there. Like it's not going to break down.
It's just like when there was the two European expeditions that were trying to get to the South Pole, and one of them was variable, and they're like, depending on the weather, we might march 0 miles, we might march 60 miles, right? And then the other one was just like, we're just going to march 20 miles every day, rain, shine, snow, storm.
Yep.
Like if it's a great day, if it's an impossible day, we're always marching 20 miles. And you would think intuitively that the flexible team would win, but no, the march 20 miles every day team won.
I mean, that's Red Green Oath. Like every draw step, you're going to draw a B plus. Like
it's probably
like the range is like B minus to B plus, and like you have Sylvan Library, so that like you're gonna play something, It's like you're just gonna cast, because it's just like the slowest tempo deck in the world. Well, it's like the slowest tempo deck in the world because like it uses all of its mana every single turn. Like every single point of mana is always in use. There's like no instance in the deck, but you just use every point of mana. But like the things that you do it for is just like animating man lands and like 4 mana Stone Rain under your own Sewer Resistance, etc., etc. It's just like hilarious the way that it behaves. But it's quite good against Goblins. It has just enough bombs against Goblins, and Pyroclasm is just like Goblins is just really bad against Pyroclasm. Like,
all right, here's an important question. How about the Patricio Duarte version of Stifle Knot? Is this a better choice?
All right, we're looking at black Stifle Knot. We have 2 main deck Togs. We have 3 main deck Duress. We have 2 Powder Kegs, 18 lands. What did we cut? We have 4 Portent, 4 Impulse, so we didn't cut there. We have 4 Counterspell, 4 Foil, so we didn't cut there. We, of course, have Dreadnought combo. So what's different?
This deck looks tight to me. Alexi's Cloak in the sideboard. I'm not playing that.
You should give me your Alexi's Cloak then, because I'm in on Alexi's Cloak.
You're in on Alexi's Cloak?
Yeah, because most of the time people are just like, I'm going to use my removal spell, and then I'm going to untap and use more removal spells. So it's like you have Alexi's Cloak, and it counters all of them. It's like Splinter Twin, too, because like if you have Alexi's Cloak, your opponent's never tapping out. Like, they can't do anything at sorcery speed against you. So it's
I don't know if I this makes me sad because Masks block was like one of my big blocks, that I played a lot in, and I don't know if I own any Alexi's Cloaks.
Yeah, it's a common.
I don't know. Probably threw them all away.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool. Sabo's Web instead of Winter Orb, sure.
But it has no alternate. Like, I wouldn't you really want some of these jobbies?
Yeah, I'm in for Brain Freeze. I don't know, like, I just stand where I stand. Like, Blue-Eyed Dreadnought's still like the best, and like, it actually pees like. I'm okay with people who love playing their version, like the Dreadnought version that they like playing, but
like me, I like blue-green because I like Nimble Manga.
yeah, but it's actually weird to me that, like, as far as adoption is concerned, like Blue-Black is seeing so much more adoption. Like, I guess people just love Psychotog, because like Blue-Black, like, Psychotog feels like it adds a half gear. Like, you're still planning to attack with something with giant power. Like, it just happens to not be you just don't 2-for-1 yourself in the process. So it's just like an extra copy of the slowest Phyrexian Dreadnought ever. Like Meddling Mage, like, is an actual clock, and that's like the part that I can't get behind. So it's like, if I was going to hybridize a Stiflenaut list that didn't have Meddling Mage, like, my secondary threat would be like a clock that doesn't 2-for-1 yourself and is like real, because Psychotog is just a fireball. It's not a it's not a beatdown creature. It's like a wall and a fireball.
Give me a Kyrian Dryad, am I right?
I mean, if we can make the mana work,
say that I'm right.
If we can make the mana work, you know that I'm in. Like,
So speaking of which,
I am.
So Fran released this video, which basically takes all of the machinery of Groatog, takes out all the Groatog cards, but leaves the machinery. So it leaves City of Brass, it leaves Mox, it leaves like a hyper amount of cantrips, even more cantrips than the average Dreadnought deck. Takes out all of the Groatog, Kyrians and so on, and replaces it with every version of Dreadnought. So when I say every version of Dreadnought, is there Fling? Yes. Is there Psychotog? Yes. And
is there Armageddon? Yes. Is there Meddling Mage? Yes.
It is every version of Dreadnought in a Groatog shell, and he 6-0'd the league. And there's
by the skin of his teeth.
And there is no way I am ever playing this deck. I watch this and I'm like, this is the softest 6-0 I've ever seen in my entire life.
You will never replicate this, because Fran drew like crazy. His opponent stumbled in key spots, and the deck is atrocious. Mox Diamond is just so like
best worst card you could ever draw.
It's actually so interesting, because you would ask me, like, it just begs the question, just like, well, why is Mox Diamond good in Groatog and why is it bad in some Dreadnought context? And the reason is Dreadnought is already a card that costs you 2 cards. And like, if you are playing a bunch of cards that cost you 2 cards, like, you either have 2 thoughts. One, you're just going to shove and then lose to any removal spell, or you're going to like wait and build up enough resources until like Dreadnought plus combo piece is like the last 2 cards that you're ever going to cast. And what Mox Diamond does to your deck is it adds a card that doesn't do anything in a card slot. So that, could be another removal spell, it could be another counter spell, but instead you're basically playing a free mana Silex.
So Grand Prix Columbus, Pro Tour Columbus in 2004, I believe, is the format that I think of as being closest to Premodern. It was also the first time I was in the booth for the nice people at Wizards of the Coast. It is weird to say that because the winning deck was an affinity deck, which obviously has Mirrodin block cards in it. But it is very similar to Premodern in a lot of other ways. And Osip Levodovich, noted Premodern fan, was one of the best players in the Pro Tour at the time, and he thought Affinity was the best deck, but somehow both he and Patrick Sullivan on Team Target just were roped into playing a deck that was they called like card disadvantage deck. Did they have Mox? Yes. Did they have Isochron Scepter? Yes. every single card was like what you're talking about, like
this is a format where Oxidize is like a popularily played card.
Oh no. And the thing was like they had Vampiric Tutor, yes. So they were like Vampiric tutoring for their cards as well as
Vampiric
boxing.
Tutor for Mox Diamond.
Yeah, for like they were like, I'm gonna Vampiric Tutor for Isochron Scepter.
Imprint Vampiric Tutor.
Yeah, so like this deck was hella card disadvantage, and Osip was just like, everybody has Energy Flux. In fact, we had Vampiric Tutor for Energy Flux, and so they came to the conclusion that because everybody had Energy Flux, and in fact Vampiric Tutor for Energy Flux, they just cut their Energy Fluxes. And he said that was the moment that I should have switched to Affinity, because Affinity ends up winning this tournament, right? Notably, both Patrick Sullivan and Osip went on to greatness in this format. Osip top-aided Grand Prix Boston with Mono Blue Storm deck with Cloud of Fairies, and Patrick Sullivan innovated the Lava Dart version of the Red Deck Wins deck. So he got away from the Volcanic Hammer paradigm, Lava Darted people out.
Oh, that's a very relevant to pre-modern format, and it'll be fun to check out coverage from those days. Yeah, I mean, can you run Korean Dryad in Fran's Abomination? So at that point, you're just playing 4 Dryad, 4 Meddling Mage, and then 4 Dreadnought. And then you're just like cutting all the flex cards I mean, one thing to understand is like
it's just like really in quotes here, right? Like all he did was cast ice because he could never cast fire, right? Like, you know, I really wish I could fire here.
Except for when his opponent was that too.
Yeah, like ice your land. Oh, I mean, the one win was just like so unreal. He like stifles Siege Gang Commander activation to stay alive at like 1 or 2 life, fires them for 1, untaps, and then flings a Psychotog or something. It was cray.
Flings a Dreadnought, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty entertaining sequence. But it was, yeah, I mean, it was like, I don't know. That's just what happens sometimes. You just have it all, and it lines up perfectly. Notably, this deck doesn't run any days. It's short, quite a few cantrips, so its only cantrips are Op Portent. It trimmed to Stifle, so lots of stuff that you're.
This is insane. How do you cut some of these cards? I guess that's the only way that you can.
Just, you can't fit. You can't fit the rest.
Armageddon, Fling, Fire Ice. Every version of Dreadnought is in this deck.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on a concept by Carlos Orellana. I don't know how to do the double L's in Spanish, but he went X2 and was like in the top 32 of the Spanish Nats. I will note that a certain pilot by the name Nacho Baranchina, who is Nacho BR online, was playing a very inspired Grotog deck list with no chills and 3 Kala Herd in the sideboard.
And he's got Swords to Plowshares in his main deck. Although I had heard many times that you just can't play Swords to Plowshares in the main deck of Grotog. It can't be done.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're wrong. I would say that the meta changed, and there was just like, well, no longer this Parfait deck. But after playing recently, I am like pretty confident that I was wrong all along. Like, so Swords to Plowshares is like really good in Grotog.
Didn't stop being the best card in the format.
Yeah, didn't. Yeah.
So this deck has got 2 Armageddons and 4 counterspells in the main deck also.
Yeah.
So I guess you scrimp on Fire Ice. That's just what you do.
Yeah, you scrimp on Fire Ice. You trim a foil. I have 4 counterspells in all my Grotog decks. You actually were the first one who said, why not just have 4 counter magi? Because we were looking at the deck list. We did this on podcast. We're like, well, what are we doing in this Grotog deck list? And we're like, well, I was like, I'm kind of down to go from 4 to 3 days. And then I was like, I'm kind of down to go from 3 to 2 days. And I was like, I'm kind of down to go from 2 to 1 days. And you said, should we just have 4 counterspell? And I was just like, I don't know. And then I tried it, and 4 counterspell is super good. Counterspell is
when you first did this, I played against you at the $1,000 tournament, just vanilla $1,000 tournament at not Sip and Play, at Endless Life, and I played around days both of our matches, and they just weren't in your deck.
Yeah, you're just like waiting for them to happen.
Yeah, I'm just like slow playing everything so I don't get dazed, and I could have probably still lost to your triple meddling mage draws.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like I had counterspell instead of daze, right? So it's like what's better like most of the time.
Well, what's better most of the time when your opponents are playing around days is really a lopsided.
You give up a lot of points against very specifically burn with 0 days in your deck, though. So there's also 0 chill in the deck. So Nacho either getting lucky or just outplaying the 22 burn pilots that were in the room.
Ooh, maybe I'll bring back Rifter. Rifter is a deck that is playable against both goblins and
why not?
And burn.
It's good against land still. It's probably bad against. It's probably good against Red Green Oath. It's like it's an Eternal Dragon deck. It has Dust Bowl.
Exact same as Black White. And
it gets sort of owned by Sabo's Web.
Not really. It's fine.
Yeah, it only has 10 lands with active.
Yeah,
you just can't. Your thawing glaciers get really bad.
All right, but you know what deck it's really bad against, which is why you're encouraging me to play it. Any deck with 2 Armageddons plus Winter Orb in the sideboard is probably pretty advantaged against this deck.
I don't know. Lightning Rift is better than a Curse Scroll against Grotog. So.
Well.
And you got to bring in Red Blast.
That is true. I also have Light of Day in my sideboard that I can singleton one of.
I say do it. I think it's time.
Yeah,
it's time for the Rifter comeback arc.
Bring it back.
Let's think about Rifter for a second. Beats Goblins. Beats Burn. Beats Stifle Knot.
I think it would crush like Flippy.
Flippy's not tier 1. We're moving down the list. Can beat Stifle Knot. Kind of depends.
Great against elves.
Elves is no longer in the metagame, but yeah. Conceivably good against Red Green Oath.
No chance in hell against Enchantress.
For the reasons that were mentioned. Enchantress, stop naming decks that aren't really in the metagame. Like, Enchantress is like sub 3%, so it's like whatever. Horrible against Replenish. Like, don't even know what you would do against Replenish.
Lose all of my lands.
Is there anything you could do? Is there like anything you could do against Replenish?
You could conceivably kill them before they were able to assemble like 4 mana.
Any of the cards, any of like if they only drew, like I can't even conjecture. But I'm trying to think about sideboarding. It's like, so can you Enlighten Tutor for Tormod's Crypt and Enlighten Tutor?
No, they can just
for Presence of the Master.
What if they just slow played you?
Wait, but listen. Presence of the Master, Tormod's Crypt. Thinking, it works. Presence of the Master is unremovable for Replenish, because its only removal for it is Seal Cleansing. Your deck plays enchantments, but we'll ignore that for a second.
Okay.
So your deck already had 4 Enlightened Tutors. The first one gets Presence of the Master. The second one gets Tormod's Crypt.
Why is Tormod's Crypt necessary?
Because Presence of the Master doesn't stop the card Replenish. Oh.
This is rough.
Is there anything that says everything you have has Shroud? And then you just lose to unkillable 4/4. Okay, it's okay. We can lose to Replenish. It sounds like we beat all of tier 1. Is that crazy? Goblins burn.
I thought it was the best deck in the format for a long time.
Yeah, but let's talk about now. Let's stop living in the past, Mike. Let's live. Okay. Let's live in the present. Does this deck beat Blue White Stifle Knot? Not necessarily, but it can.
It could win.
Yeah.
It could win.
Like it's just
if you resolve the card Astral Slide, like they're
it doesn't even matter how much you get Armageddon. And Meddling Mage is a joke against Lightning Rift.
And you've got Seals and Plows and
you will get Armageddon, but they might not be able to close after getting you. You might have you can sandbag some lands, like you Eternal Dragon some extra lands. If you have your enchantments in play, like if you have a Lightning Rift in play, they'll never Meddling Mage, and if you have an Astral Slide in play, they'll never Dreadnought, and you'll be drawing cards along the way. I think It's very interesting. And you beat Red Green Oath. There's like literally the 4 decks in tier 1. We're talking about like a 75% spread. Like 70% maybe if we're being conservative.
Well, and it's also lopsided because Premodern and Chill is going to be a disproportionate number of red and goblin decks. We think.
Mike, you were just ahead of your time. You were just 2 years too soon. Like, it's time now. Now it's time.
Man, I'm this. I tell you what, I'll get Pog to do it.
No, you can't get Pog to do it. You don't send Pog on the journey to the top of the mountain. He's not gonna make it. You have to get there yourself. You have to eat the magical shrub, man. Like, come on.
All right.
You don't want Pog to eat the shrub.
Rifter it is. I'm excited to bring back Rifter.
This is real. I think it's super real. Like, I actually...
I don't even have Rifter counted as one of the decks that I have built, but I have it. It's built.
Oh my god, I think it's time. I think I'll play it for my next YouTube video. It might just be time. Let's just message Fran. I'm going to message Fran right now. Fran. Caps. Rifter. Think about it. Beats all the good decks. Yeah. Because Fran has the same thing. He was thinking for tomorrow's Premodern challenge. He's like, I need a deck that beats Burn.
Rifter beats Burn.
Yeah. To catch people up, if you don't know about Rifter, it's a cycling control deck. It had its sort of moment. It was super interesting. Just shy of a couple years ago.
Jens Jaeger won the Utzen Troll tournament with it last year's Swedish Nationals, I think.
Yeah, and I think he top 8'd Euros.
Yeah.
Beating Aaron Dix. Deck has 4 main deck Renewed Faith, several main deck Slice and Dice, both superb cards against Goblins and Burn, respectively. 1 Enlightened Tutor Bowl Rune of Protection red, completely unreal against Burn.
It is.
Has text against Goblins. It contains the card Lightning Rift. I don't know if you check the toughness on the entire Goblins deck, but in case Slice and Dice was enough, it's got 4 Spark Spray in addition to 4 Swords to Plowshares. So Goblin Lackey never gets in.
Its sideboard has the card Exalted Angel, which is, as you know, is great against the Rock, but it's also a cheat in this deck. You can just play it with the card Astral Slide. It flips the.
Yeah, it flips the Angel. It's protected. It's like protected from removal on future turns. The cycling itself behaves as an engine, so you're just generally good against decks that are trying to grind with you. You have Eternal Dragon for additional grind. This was a deck that you were super hyped on. If you're a new follower of Spy Colony, Michael J was obsessed with this deck. He almost couldn't let it go, and I kept telling him, I was just like, I think you basically for every month for the last 20 months, at least once during each month, you've been like, is it time for Rifter? And I've just been like, if it's time for Rifter, you're gonna have to be the one to do it because nobody else is playing that deck. But now that we're talking about it out loud, I think that it's time for Rifter.
Oh man, I was going through my boxes today, and I'm like, oh, I need to move the Lightning Rifts into the sideboard of the Fluctuator deck, and I didn't.
Yeah,
so
it was a sign.
It was a sign.
All right. Well, you heard it here first. The new best deck in Premodern could be Rifter. You're just going to lose to Replenish.
Well, any of the Replenish cousins, like Landy Hoth, Enchantress, those are all going to annihilate Rifter.
You can plausibly defeat Enchantress.
How? They have Solitary Confinement.
You have a Chroma's Vengeance. And Tormod's Crypt.
All right,
we're gonna Chroma's Vengeance. Chroma's Vengeance, Crypt you. Slice and Dice naturally answers Argothian. I think the interesting thing would be to try to splash green, because it is the center color. So a few fetch lands. Obviously, you can't play too many fetch lands because you have to have a lot of plains. You have a lot of cycling lands, etc., etc. But red and white touch green in the middle, so you could maybe make that work. So some interesting thoughts there, mainly to flashback Ray of Revelation. Maybe Sylvan Library is kind of okay in the cycling deck. So lots of things to think about. We'll have to leave that for next week. Looking ahead to what is going to be week 5, but the week 4, the 4th broadcast of the PSS 6, we're going to have Chris DiBiase against Michael Phillips, Nick Mayo versus James Smits. I'll be playing against Mike Harris, and Flores will be playing against McLean. So we switched dance partners once again. BK is listed on commentary, so that'll be exciting. Cloud Girl Ranger, twitch.tv/Cloud Girl Ranger, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Mike, do you have any random final thoughts?
Premodern is so great that we're coming back to Rifter after 2 years, and Fran is coming off a 6-0 with
5-color Dreadnought.
The worst pile I've ever seen.
It's actually crazy because fans of the PSS might recall Mano just having all the goods in his 3-color Dreadnought deck, and Fran's just taking it one step further. Love to. I
mean, I want that deck to be good so much. I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to play this.
Yeah, but it's too much card disadvantage. Mox Diamond and Dreadnought combo, they just don't.
And Fling.
Yeah, they don't really want to hang. Well, Fling is deterministic, right? So it's just kind of Fling is just a little combo card. I think if you conceptualize the deck, I think you just would need to figure out how to make the plans robust. I was very impressed that the Meddling Mage idea still worked. I was very impressed that Fling was a real dimension. I was impressed that Psychotog was a real dimension. It actually felt like it could do all the things, just not particularly well. It's just but it could do them. So the deck was giving his opponents a ton of looks.
I was thinking when I was watching the video, I'm like, well, what if we brought back Blue-Red Dreadnought, which has a lot of these
and just fix the mana with Mox Diamond? I had the same
thought. Use Mox Diamond instead of Lotus Diamond.
What it does is that it allows the deck to be a good Gush deck again, but it's a little bit thin if you're still going to play the card Grim Lavamancer. Grim Lavamancer really wants you to not be taking 1 damage every time you activate it. There's some thought there.
I mean, just the Blue-Red Dreadnought deck has less pressure on red than Grotog has on all its other colors, right?
I mean, it's
Fire Ice, Grim Lavamancer activations, Lightning Bolt and Fling.
Yeah.
Versus Meddling Mage, Psychotog. I guess it's not persistent for the Grotog deck. Just needs 1 colored tap, right? 1
color total the entire time, and you've got 1,000 ways to get there.
Right? Yeah. All right, that's different.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a fun brewing space. I think that the Blue-White Dreadnought deck is best at what it does. I even think that the Mono Blue and the Blue-Black deck Dreadnought decks are roughly also really great at what it does. So, is there a alternate Dreadnought-based plan? I think that Dreadnought it has a lot of deck building restriction. We're talking about 12 cards that don't do anything unless they're paired up. So that already forces you to play a lot of cantrips. Playing a lot of cantrips already means you're going to be base blue. Investing heavily into a combo really makes you want to continue to add cards to that combo instead of adding just generically good cards. Okay, well, why don't we play Call the Herd? It's because Call the Herd doesn't support Dreadnought, right? It's just Call the Herd supports itself. I think that one thing that we never got around to talking about was Cabal Interrogator.
I love that guy.
The guy finished Nationals runner-up, cuts all of the counter spells basically. I think literally all the counter magic from the Blue-Black Dreadnought list, and it's just I'm not going to counter your spells. I'm just going to get all of them out of your hand with 4 copies of Cabal Interrogator, 4 Duress, 4 Cabal Therapy, and cast Dreadnought, and I won't have anything that I need to counter, because they'll all be gone. So I would just take that deck, shore myself up against Meddling Mage Seal Cleansing maybe a little bit, and then maybe add in that concept. Because once you start cutting counterspells, you kind of reduce quite a bit of strain on the deck building restriction of Dreadnought decks.
How much blue mana you need, right?
No, well, how much blue you need? You kind of need the blue mana if you're going to run Gush. The Blue-Black deck didn't run Gush, but you can tap out and you don't have to pass the turn. So you can just tap out and sort of put different kinds of pressure on your opponent than sort of playing this like pass the turn game. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there. I'm excited to see what happens in the multicolor Dreadnought space. I'm happy to see it not be all blue white, blue mono blue, or blue black. So,
well, I'm very interested in kind of the black, green, white Dreadnought space with greater good.
With greater good, let's go.
That's where my head is at right now. I even posted about it in the Spike Colony Facebook group. And then I don't know. We didn't talk about this. What do you think about my idea? Last year I was banging the drum to get land tax banned, and you were on the opposite side. But what do you think about my idea about unbanning Flash? I think Flash is inoffensive.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just kind of like whatever on it. Where it's like, I think somebody asked about this in the sort of mailbag thread that I posted, or like, what do you think should be unbanned? I'm like, Mike Arnold runs a ban series in which people unban one card and they get to play with it. And there's some cards that people never unban. And Flash is amongst them, and you can make a case for Flash. I'm kind of just like generally bored by that idea. Like, as far as like ban speculation goes, I think I'll say this: the format itself has been such a moving target for me. Like, even though I devote all my energy to it, that like speculating on what would happen, what the deck would look like if you unban Flash, if it'd be too strong, if it'd not be too strong, because it's just kind of like, yeah, like Flash is interesting. Like, we already don't play Academy Rector, so like, what would happen if we could play Academy Rector, but like on turn 2, like, what are we gonna Flash Rector in on turn 2 that's gonna win us the game?
I mean, no, Turtle Splash and Rector get a little bit better, but they don't get broken.
Yeah.
Right? It makes really interesting things. Like, it makes Rainbow Efreet a more interesting card, in my opinion.
Rainbow Efreet.
Yeah. Like, Rainbow Efreet is a card that is not currently played. Rainbow Efreet would be pretty good if Flash were unbanned.
The phasing guy?
Yeah.
Just so that you spend 2 cards to play 3-1 and on a turn instead of on your main phase?
Yeah, but in the decks that Rainbow Efreet is good, you might not ever want to be able... You might not want to commit playing him on your main phase, but if you ever get him into play, you win the game.
Yeah, but right? I don't want to cast... I don't want to waste a card, right? It's just like, I've got a 2-card combo that costs 2 mana and wins the game.
But you can't think about it like that, right? Like, you have to think about it like, if this Flash... First of all, the Flash might also just be like a great test spell where your opponent can't afford to not counter it, right? Like,
if it turns out that way, I mean, wild speculations. It's like evaluate. Like, I'm just
talking about how Flash was used in standard.
Yeah, sure. I mean, on rate, it doesn't like excite me, especially if you're going to use it in a fair way. Like, if your plan is that you're going to use it to literally spend a card to give a card that, like, a creature Flash, then that's fine. Like, I am not scared of any creatures at instant speed. Like, I'm just not. Terravor. Flash Terravor. Let's go.
Yeah, but I mean, different decks might be enabled as a result of this. That's
yeah. I mean, I don't care. Like, I'll wait for Martin Berlin to do it. I have, like, show and tell prove not to be broken.
Yeah, but
Flash
that's
probably
my whole
isn't
point.
broken.
If Flash isn't broken, it shouldn't be banned.
Yeah, but it's like, so like, the nature of Premodern is that the ban list has to be like pretty like reliable, just because that's what people want. Like, there's a cohort of people who just be like, if it's not broke, like, don't fix it. It's just like, there's no reason for it to change because it's in such a great place right now. But obviously Premodern also is just like, if we unban Flash and Flash deck is good, then you can just ban Flash. It'd be something that's like worth testing. Like, if it were, if I was Martin Berlin and I had unbans on my radar, I would pretty rigorously test like the most broken deck list I could possibly cook up with. I'd ask people, what they thought was broken, and then try to do that. But just because it's like, it's not worth it if you're just imagining, you're just like, oh, it doesn't seem like it has much potential, and you unban it and then you have to ban it again. So
that's true.
But yeah, I mean, Premodern's great. We are I don't know, I'm super hyped. Tournament next week, getting back in the ring. I didn't finish my thought. I was like in the slump where I was just like punting a bunch of matches. There's only one deck that I never punt with, Like I just straight up,
Throw it.
I just straight up like, I'm just like dialed in when I play the deck. Like I just feel it just feels right, and I've turned into a one trick pony. Like I like playing lots of decks. Like I take pride in being able to play Burn, being able to play Goblins, Parfait, Replenish, Dreadnought, every deck. Like maybe not mid range. Like maybe not a great Rock player, but even though I invented a variant of the Rock, but
the dominant variant of the Rock.
But I just like Grotog. I'm just like on another level, man. I'm just enlightened. It's just like it's Super Saiyan. So you know, why would I change off it when the real dollars and cents are on the line?
I think that's a very healthy thought. That's what.
And look at you,
got me
with Burn
to my decisions on PSS this year. Yeah. Just play what I can play competently.
Well, this has been Spy Colony. I think it's 41. ko-fi.com/Spy Colony. If you wish to donate, you're not obliged. We love you nonetheless. Big shout out to Sunny for becoming a member at the Spike Soldier tier. I'm going to work on, so Sunny and SWB are at the Spike Soldier tier. Phil Quinn is a Spike feeder. I'm going to see if we can make some F It We Ball hats for all our supporters, and then possibly
how many tiers? I'm looking on the website. How many tiers are there?
There's just 2 tiers.
Okay, Spike feeder and Spike Soldier.
I promised to figure out some goodies to give to the homies that are regular supporters. You don't have to be a regular supporter. You can just drop a little tip in the tip jar. It's like the whole concept is to buy us a coffee, but you know, we love you nonetheless. We're gonna keep things free. Same plugs, links in the description. PSS, YouTube. Check out Fran's YouTube. Fran's YouTube is amazing. Check out the deck list from Spanish Nats. Check out Spike Colony Premodern on Facebook. Ask us questions. No stupid questions. And
that's actually the rule. No stupid.
Yeah, no stupid questions.
No
stupid questions not allowed.
Yeah.
Love Spike Colony.
love Mike. All right.